Hello everybody, it's lovely to see you all again for another Tea with the Curator. My name's Katherine and I'm one of the assistant curators at the River and Rowing Museum. So let's settle down with a cup of tea for a few minutes and unwind as I take you back in the footsteps of Henry Taunt, whose photographs provide us with a lovely insight into life and work along the Victorian Thames. So the museum is lucky enough to have an incredible collection of photos taken by Henry Taunt. Now I have to admit, when I was looking through this collection, I found it really difficult to choose just one of these photos to show you today. But I did settle on these two wonderful photos of Henley from the 1870s. Now on your screens you can see Henley Bridge, St Mary's Church and Temple Island, which are only a stone's throw away from the museum. Now in Taunt's words, Henley's charm consists chiefly in the beautiful reach of the river, which makes it beyond all others the grand meeting place of the amateur oarsmen on the occasion of the Henley Royal Regatta. And I think these really soothing photos prove Taunt's point. He actually clearly appreciated the charm of Henley himself, because there's this photo of him standing in Mill Meadows in Henley, which I'm sure many of you know is very close to the River and Rowing Museum. So who was Henry Taunt? Well, this is him, shown here next to his boat in Wallingford in about 1870. He was born in 1842 into a rather modest family, but as a teenager started to work at Edward Bratcher, one of Oxford's few photographers. His passion for taking photos of the Thames really began though in Christmas 1859, when he went on a trip up the river to Cricklade and back by himself in a dinghy, can you believe? He then returned the following summer when he took some of his first photos of the Upper Thames. In 1872, Taunt really made a name for himself when he became the first photographer to produce an illustrated guidebook to the Thames. So he published a new map of the River Thames. And here on your screens is a lovely copy of the 5th edition of this guidebook, which is actually from the museum's collection. Now the guidebook was an immediate success and the perfect guide for tourists, rowers and anglers. From then on, Taunt's business really went from strength to strength, and at one point he even had 3,000 photos for sale and took many commissions. Taunt was also a great pioneer in photography, which was still very much a new art form in his day. He used cutting-edge technology, including the wet plate process on location, and that would have been a major achievement in the 1860s and 70s. Now, as we've just seen as well from Taunt's lovely photos of Henley, his prints are really soothing to look at because they're a very warm chocolate brown colour. And these sort of sepia images were really popular amongst the Victorians because of their very warm effect. But for me, the fact that Taunt's photos were almost lost to history make them even more special. It's really luck that around 13,000 of his photos survive today, because when he died in 1922, many of his glass plates were lost, so they were either smashed up or they were cleaned and reused for greenhouse glass. Fortunately though, a librarian in Oxford had the foresight to save thousands of his negatives, prints and papers. And so now many survive in museums and archives across the country, including the River and Rowing Museum. And what I really love about Taunt is his love of the outdoors, and the soothing photos that we've just seen really remind us of the importance of, slowing down and taking care of ourselves. Taunt actually once said, "First, we live in an age so fast and energetic that the mind and body get thoroughly used up, demanding in the same interval rest and renewal of vigour that may fit for after periods of toil. And what greater pleasure can there be to a man, tired out in body and mind, than to throw himself on his back under some wide-spreading tree and listen to the gentle stream that murmurs by, or, with a rod in hand, to watch the nodding float which, on disappearing, rouses him from a pleasant reverie. So with this in mind, why don't you now sit back, cherish the quiet of these lovely scenes of Henley, and notice how the river is a perfect mirror for Henley's stunning scenery. And if you're out and about in Henley when you're doing your hour of exercise each day, why don't you take a few minutes to explore these wonderful landmarks for yourself? So for instance, you could notice what has changed or maybe what hasn't changed since Taunt's day. And if you can, maybe take a few minutes to slow down, pause and admire the beauty of nature right here on our doorsteps. So thank you again for joining me this afternoon, and I hope you have a lovely day, and I also hope that I get to see many of you when the museum reopens very soon. Thank you for listening.